Hey guys, in this video I will show you how to create a GUI application using Python. In this demo application, the user can select an Excel spreadsheet and convert it to a CSV file. Yet this is just an example. The main purpose of this video is to show you how to create a GUI application where you can save and load user settings. So when I enter a value here, click the Save Settings button and close the app, I can still see our changes the next time I open our application. Furthermore, we will create a custom menu bar to add even more features to our application. So after watching this video, you will be able to convert your Python code to an actual program. We will start from scratch and I will explain each line along the way. Okay, and without further ado, let us get started. First things first, we need to install the required dependencies for this project. To create the GUI, we are going to use the PySimpleGUI package. And therefore, open up your terminal or command prompt, type pip install PySimpleGUI and hit enter. Once we have that out of the way, let me open up a blank Python file. As a first step, I will import PySimpleGUI as SG. Then I will define the layout of our application. I think it is easier when I first type out the complete structure and then I explain how it works. In PySimpleGUI, each line within the layout list represents one row. So in my first row, I want to display some text, followed by an input field and a button to browse for files. The second column is very similar, but I want to browse for a folder instead of a file. In the last row, I have included two buttons. For each element, you can also specify additional parameters. Later, we want to get the values from the input fields. To do so, I have provided the key argument. We will see how this works in just a moment. And also I want to mention that I have structured this video in a way that we start with a very simple design. So we will adjust our layout throughout the video and add more fields and parameters. With that said, let us carry on with the script. Now that we have the layout in place, we need a window to display it. So within sg.window, I will define a title and provide our layout. As the last step, I now want to check for any events in our window consistently. As before, let me shortly type out the entire while loop and then I will explain each line. So for example, if someone clicks the exit button, PySimpleGUI should close the window. We can do this with a while loop. Within this loop, I can get the events and values from our window. I will also print out the event and values to our console for debugging purposes. Okay, and as I said, I now want to check for the different events. If someone clicks on the X in the upper right corner, the window closed event gets triggered. Likewise, when the user clicks the exit button, the exit event will be triggered. In that case, we want to break out of the while loop and close the window. If the user hits the convert to CSV button, it will display an error message saying that this feature is not implemented yet. Okay, and with that in place, let us test our application. Back in my terminal, I will type Python followed by the name of the Python file. In my case, I have named it main.py. After hitting enter, we will see our GUI. If I now go ahead and press the convert to CSV button, I will get the error pop-up message. Additionally, as I have included the print commands for the event and values, we can see it in the console. The event was the convert to CSV button click, and the values are stored in a dictionary. Currently, the input fields are empty. We could now also test the browse button. By clicking this button, a file selector window appears. Notice that currently I can select any files. Later we will change this to only select Excel files. Likewise, if I click the other button, we can now select a folder. Okay, and to close this window, I can click on exit. By the way, you can also see that the event was exit. And at the moment I clicked on it, we stored the different file paths in the input fields. Okay, this is our basic GUI application. Let us now add more features to this app. As a first step, I will remove the print commands, as I have used those only for the sake of explanation. Next, I want to make sure to only select Excel files. We can do this by specifying the file types parameter. This parameter takes a tuple of tuples as an input. First, I will define the label, so Excel files, and then I can specify the file types. In my case, the file suffix should contain XLS. Okay, and with that in place, let us rerun the code. By the way, in my text editor, I'm using a shortcut key to execute the Python file. So instead of returning to my Windows terminal, I have a built-in terminal down here. But in any case, if I execute the script and click on the Browse button, I can now only select Excel files. This is all working great, but let us now implement the actual function to convert the chosen spreadsheet into a CSV file. Before doing that, let us save some real estate in my text editor by putting the square brackets on the same line. Next, I will install pandas to convert the workbook into a CSV file. If you do not have pandas installed yet, open your terminal, type pip install pandas and hit enter. Under the hood, pandas also relies on the optional dependency OpenPyXL to manipulate Excel files. Therefore, ensure to install that package by typing pip install OpenPyXL and pressing enter. With that in place, we can import pandas as PD. As we will also deal with different file paths, I will import path from pathlib. Pathlib is a core Python module, hence you do not need to install it. After our imports, I will create a new function and name it convert to CSV. This function will take a couple of arguments. We will need the information about the Excel file path, output folder, sheet name, separator and decimal value. By default, each value is separated by a comma, as the name CSV implies, comma separated values. However, in our application, we could also change the comma to any other character. Also, in Germany, for example, we use a period for the thousand separator. To have full flexibility, I have also defined this as a parameter. So later in the actual GUI application, we could switch between a comma and a period. With our parameters defined, I will convert the given workbook and spreadsheet into a pandas data frame using pd.readExcel. When converting the spreadsheet into a CSV file, I want to use the same file name for the output file. To get only the file name without the full path, I'm taking advantage of the pathlib library and the stem property. With that file name, I will construct the output path. In particular, I want to save it to the output folder and the file ending should be CSV. Pandas makes it super easy to convert the data frame to a CSV file. You just need to type df.csv followed by the output file path, separator and decimal value. As I do not need the index, I have set it to false. Once that is done, I can inform the user by displaying a simple pop-up message. With our function in place, we can now use it instead of the error pop-up window. So when the user clicks the convert to CSV button, we want to execute our function. The Excel file path and output folder will be stored in the input fields, so the values dictionary. For now, I will use some hard-coded values for the sheet name, separator and decimal value. We will take care of this later in the video when we implement a dedicated settings function. But for now, let me go ahead and execute the script. As before, we can select our Excel file and output folder. If I now hit the convert to CSV file, we will get a pop-up message. Okay, this seems to be working. Before checking out the CSV file, let us quickly look at the Excel file. We have here some dummy sales data for the different stores by date. All the data is located in sheet 1. If everything went well, we should see this data also in the CSV file. So let me open up our generated CSV in a notepad. Alright, and here we can see our sales data again. Notice that each value is separated by a pipe symbol as specified in our script. Okay, now that the basic functionality is working, let me add another feature. Before converting an Excel file, I might want to check the content of the spreadsheet directly from our application instead of launching Excel. So for this, I will insert a new button with the label Display Excel File. Down in my while loop, I will also add this event. For now, I will simply insert pairs, because first we need to implement this functionality. And therefore, I will add a new function and name it Display Excel File, which will take two arguments, the Excel file path and sheet name. As before, I will convert the workbook into a pandas data frame and extract the file name. To display the content of the data frame, I will show you a nifty trick. I can simply use the pop-up scrolled element. Along with the data frame itself, I will also display some additional information, like the data types for each column. I will use a couple of equal signs to separate the additional information from the actual data frame. And finally, I could also give this pop-up window a title. In my case, I will pick the file name. Okay, and with our function in place, let me scroll down a bit and insert it right here. Also, as before, the Excel file path will be available in the input field. And for now, I will use a hard-coded string for the sheet name. So let me test it out and select our spreadsheet. If I now click on the Display Excel file button, we get a glimpse of the data, plus the additional information about the different data types for each column. That is working great, but there is one bug I want to fix. You might have guessed it already. Our application will crash if I delete the file path and hit the button again. This behavior is definitely not a great user experience and we should fix it. So before processing any data, let us ensure to validate the file paths. To do this, I'm going to implement yet another function. This function has only one parameter, the file path. If that file path is not empty, and if it exists, we will return true. Otherwise, we want to display an error message saying that the file path is incorrect and returning false. Now that we have this handy function, let us use it and apply it in our while loop. So before displaying the Excel data, I will check if the user provided a valid file path. By the way, we could even go the extra mile and check if the file is indeed an Excel workbook. But I will leave the implementation up to you. Also, for our main function, I will validate the file paths. In particular, I need to check if the input file and output folder names are correct. As you know, we can get the input file from the values dictionary by using the in key. Likewise, I will do the same for the output folder and indent our code below. Alright, let us test it out. If I open the GUI and just hit the Display Excel file button, we will get an error message. Only if I select a spreadsheet and hit the button again, we will get our summary window. Yet, as we do not have provided an output folder, we still cannot convert it to a CSV file. If I try to do so, I will get the same error message. So only if we have all file paths in place, we will be allowed to proceed with our functions. Alright, we have made some good progress until now. Let us take it now a step further and take care of the hard-coded strings in our script. So in the final application, the user should be able to change those settings directly from the app itself. And therefore, I will create a settings.config file in the root directory of the app. Within this file, I can define different sections. So let me create one section which will take care of the default GUI settings, like the title, font size, font family, and theme. Additionally, I will add a section for the CSV manipulation, so the separator, the decimal symbol, and the default value for the decimal. So the separator could be pretty much any character we want. However, for the decimal, I want to limit the selection. It should be either a period or a comma. And finally, we will have a section for the Excel file. Here I will only specify the sheet name. Okay, and with that, let me save the config file and go back to my script. Before loading our settings, I will define a new function called main window. Then I will select our code and indent it by one level. To now call our script, I will check if the built-in variable name is main. You might have seen this boilerplate code before. I will not go into the details of what the main variable is. This would be beyond the scope of this tutorial. But basically, whenever I run this code from my command line, Python should execute the code after this if condition. First, I will define the directory location of our settings file. In my case, it is in the root directory of the script, so the current working directory. Next, I will create the settings object by using sg.userSettings. In this object, I will define the path to the settings file and the file name. Additionally, I will set useConfig file to true, and PySimpleGUI should convert any boolean and non-values in my settings file. With that in place, we can now load the settings. We haven't talked about the theme yet, but PySimpleGUI has a wide range of color themes. I will show you this in just a moment. To get the theme name, I will first access the section. Within that section, I want to get the value for the theme. I will do the same for the font family and font size. After retrieving those values from the settings file, I will set the global theme and font. For the font size, PySimpleGUI expects an integer, such as 14 pixels. Yet, when we are retrieving the values, we will get back a string. Therefore, let me convert the font size to an integer. With that in place, I will now call our main window. As we have defined the settings as a global variable, I could also access them directly in our function. So let me also replace a couple of hard-coded strings. First, I will get the window title from our ini file and replace it here. Next, let me replace sheet1 with the value from our settings file. And I will do the same for the sheet name, separator and decimal value in our convert to CSV function. Okay, that was now a lot of code. Before moving on, I just want to ensure everything is working. So let me execute our script. And you will notice that the overall appearance has changed due to the theme settings. The neat thing is that I could change the theme directly in my settings file without adjusting the code. So in my ini file, we could set the font family to Comic Sans and change the theme name. When I save the file and execute our code, we can immediately see the changes. So feel free to play around with the settings. I will also leave a link to all available themes in the description box below. For this tutorial, I will use the 𝗗𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗢 theme and Arial for the font family. Having this settings file is already pretty cool, but we will take it even one step further. Ultimately, I want to see and change any settings directly from the GUI. Therefore, I will insert a new button with the label settings. If the user clicks this button, I want to open up a settings window. Obviously, this function does not exist yet. So let us create it right above our main window. You might have noticed it already, but every time I write code, I want to test it along the way. So before coding out the full settings window, let me implement a temporary pop-up window to display our settings. When I rerun the script and click on the settings button, we should see the content of the ini file. Okay, great. As this is working, I will define the layout for our settings window. Let me speed up the video shortly and then I will explain it. I have not introduced too many elements here. As before, I have a text, input and button element. Additionally, I have set the size of the separator input field to 1 character. So the user can only input 1 character, like the pipe symbol or a comma. Also, by default, I will now load our settings for the separator, sheet name and decimal value. In fact, for the decimal sign, the user should only have the option to select either period or comma. Therefore, I have used a combo box. To fill the combo box with our two choices, I'm creating a list by splitting the value by the pipe symbol. Now that we have the two choices, I can specify the default value. Okay, and with our layout in place, I can initialize the window. You will notice that I have set modal to true. A modal window won't let you interact with any other windows in your program until you exit it. That means when the user opens the settings window, they cannot interact with our main window. Next, I will create the event loop. This is very similar to the main window. Yet if the user clicks on the save current settings, I want to write the new settings to the ini file. And this is as easy as reading the values. All you need to do is to specify the value you want to change, followed by the new value. I will do this for the separator, decimal symbol and the sheet name. After that, I will inform the user that the settings have been successfully saved, and then I will break out the while loop and close the window. Alright, let us now test our code. When I run the script and hit the settings button, our settings window appears. By default, it displays the current settings from our ini file. However, we have now the option to override those values. To demonstrate this, I will set the decimal to a comma and use a semicolon for the separator. After clicking the save button, we could test it out. So let me select our Excel file and the output path. When I now convert it to a CSV and open up the new file, we can see that the semicolon now separates the values. We could also check out the ini file to see the new settings. Now that we can load and save settings, let us move on to the last feature of our app. I will now show you how you can create a custom menu for the GUI. To define the menu, we will use a list of lists. So this will be very similar to the layout. In fact, let me also type out the menu first and then I will explain it. In the first part, I will define the name of the menu option, for instance toolbar. Within the toolbar, I can then list the different menu items. If you want, you could also use a divider as I did here. Just be careful with all those opening and closing brackets. Once we have the menu definition in place, we can insert it into our layout. Just type sg.menuBarCustom followed by the menu definition. Additionally, I will set 𝗗𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗣𝗦 to false. In just a moment, I will show you what the 𝗗𝗘𝗦 parameter does. But first, let me run the script. As a result, we will now have our menu with the different options. By setting 𝗗𝗘𝗦 to true, we will get a cool effect out of the box. So if I rerun the script, I can now separate the menu items from our window and drag them around. However, in this example, I will set 𝗗𝗦𝗧𝗏 back to false. Now that we have our menu, we need to fill it with some functionalities. Because right now the menu buttons do not do anything. But as the menu is now part of our layout, we could just add them to our event loop. The event's name will be simply the name of the menu item. For example, if the user clicks on About, I want to hide our main window. Instead, I want to show a pop-up with our window title and some information about our app. I will just show the current version and add a short description of what our application does. Optionally, you could also set grab anywhere to true to move the window around. Once the user closes this pop-up, I will show the main window again. I will leave the other dummy commands up to you. If someone clicks on the command 1, 2, 3 or 4, I will display an error message that those features are not implemented yet. Feel free to change this and implement additional features in your app. Okay, and with that we are ready to test it out. When I now navigate to Help and click on About, we can see the additional information in a pop-up. After clicking OK, we will return to the main window. Also, notice that I have used the same name for Settings and Exit. That means we can now also navigate to the Settings menu through the menu bar. And as mentioned, feel free to add more features to the toolbar. Alright guys, we are almost done with our application. As the final step, I will clean up our code and adjust the overall styling. First, I want to change the style of the window title. Instead of gray, it should have the same color as the current theme. To do that, I will set Use Custom Title Bar to true. The next adjustment is optional, but you can also use a short form for the different elements to save you some typing. For the text element, you could simply type T. Likewise, for input, you could use I, and for a button, just type B. Now that we have that, I will adjust the size for some elements, starting with the Exit button. This button should have a size of 16 characters. Additionally, I will change the button color to tomato. Let me also change the size of the other buttons. Alright, those are all the changes I wanted to do in the main window. Now, up in the settings window, I will repeat those modifications. First, I will set the custom title bar to true. Then I will use the element's short form to reduce the line length. And just to ensure that everything is working fine, let us rerun the code. All our buttons in the last row now have the same length and the title bar color has changed. For the final touch, I will also change the size of the text fields and align them to the right. This will be a quick fix. You can simply type S followed by the character size. To align the elements, I will set justification to the right. I will repeat this also for the other text field. After that, let me save the script and rerun it. Okay, this is now looking much better. And this is pretty much everything I wanted to show you. You have now created your custom GUI with a menu bar and a settings file. But before you go, I even have a bonus tip for you. I assume in many cases you want to share your application with your friends or co-workers. Yet they cannot use your app if they do not have Python installed. Therefore, we will convert our Python file into a standalone executable file. To convert our Python file, we will use another package called psgcompiler. You can install it by running pip install psgcompiler in your command prompt or terminal. But before you install it, I want to emphasize that you should create a separate virtual environment. Within that virtual environment, you can then install all the dependencies you need for your project. For example, we have used PySimpleGUI, pandas and OpenPyXL. Additionally, I will now also install the PSG compiler in that environment. I have called my environment PyGUI, but the name doesn't matter. I'm telling you this because if you run the PSG compiler from your base environment, PSG compiler will compile all packages that you have installed in that environment. That means you could end up with a file size for your simple GUI of hundreds of megabytes with a slow loading time. So keep that in mind. And with that said, I will type PSG compiler and hit enter. You should now see a new window. Let me actually place the current folder and the PSG compiler next to each other. Under the hood, the PSG compiler is using the PyInstaller package. And within the PyInstaller package, you could set many options. However, we will keep things simple here. Just click on Browse and select your Python file. Once selected, click the Convert button. This process might take some time, but once done, you will have a new file in your folder along with some caching files. It is safe to delete the PyCache folder. And for testing purposes, I will also delete the CSV file we generated earlier. Instead of the Python file, I can now execute the main.exe file and our program will start. As before, you will have all the functionalities. So you could change and save the settings. And to validate that everything is still working, I will check out the display Excel file button before converting it to a CSV file. Okay guys, and here you have it, your own GUI application written in Python. Let me know in the comments what kind of programs you plan to build with the PySimpleGUI package. And as always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.